3, 2, 1. What's happening, guys? It's Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening. And gentlemen and ladies, there's only 2 more games left on this 2024 historic year. And I wouldn't think I'd be saying
Thank
that
God.
in November. And in this way of a historic year being the worst year almost in program history. But there are
not
still
almost.
2 more games. So yeah, 2 more games left on this. So who knows where we could head to finish off this 2024 year for Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles. But nonetheless, we're here. We're live. We got a ton to talk about this evening. We got a list of quick hitters, including a 4-star quarterback, Tramel Jones, flipping from Florida State to UF. We're going to have a good discussion on that, along with another handful of things regarding recruiting. Florida State also landing a commit there. We're going to talk Thomas Castellanos, Boston College quarterback, entering or planning to enter the transfer portal. We're going to discuss Patrick Surtain Sr. getting an initial interview with his alum, Southern Miss. We're going to jump into a convo of E.J. Manuel. He gave his thoughts on Mike Norvell and play calling moving forward. And then we're going to talk about the town hall that Michael Alford, Florida State's athletic director, spoke at regarding the coaching search, also his relationship with Mike Norvell and the 2024 struggles. Also going to jump into Mike Norvell's Monday presser and pick out a few things that stood out to us. Former coach also being in attendance this week, Chip Long, a former guy under Mike Norvell, actually was in attendance for a couple of practices. Dustin's going to jump us in and we'll discuss that. And then we got, of course, our NFL Noles recap. We'll do a little small preview for Florida State versus Charleston Southern. And then we're going to give our best bets for that game, score predictions, and a little bit of Florida State basketball, which is 4-1 on the season, baby. With me this evening is Austin Beasy, our lead basketball writer and football guy. And then down below is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief. Gentlemen, how we doing?
It's good to be back. Nice little week to recharge. I can say, I've taken advantage of the 3 bye weeks that we've had during this 2024 season. That's probably been one of the better parts of the last couple of months. But yeah, ready to talk about this game and, everything that's come over the last week.
Yeah, I did not take advantage of that bye week. It's full basketball season. The Mavericks had like 5 games in 8 days there for a little while. So we've been working. We get 2 days off without basketball. It's a weird feeling, but sadly, we have to talk about Florida State football in the meantime.
Whoa, come on now. This is a chance of getting another win. This is doubling the wins right here. Going to 2 wins on the season, VZ. You're missing out. This could be a good time.
Yeah, the basketball team has played 5 games and already has 4 wins. So I don't really care about a second win at this point.
See, just get ready, everybody. Just wait. We're going to hear it all throughout the next of this. If basketball starts rolling, then it's just going to be very heavy in what VZ has to say in the basketball world.
I had to take it for 2 years. It's time for me to give it back.
We went through so many eras of bad football, though. Not this bad, but yeah, basketball did take a big lump. But either way, baby, we're here. We got tons of news to talk about this week. Before we get started, if you're on YouTube right now, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Tons of videos are going out from on practices and to just clips from our show here. So if you can't tune in every week to the longer episode here when we're live, you can jump into a lot of the clips. So make sure you're subscribed and also like the video. But let's get started. Got a lot to talk about. Let's start off with number 1, which I think everybody would like us to jump into first. Florida State losing one of their blue chip guys in their class, 4-star quarterback Tramel Jones. Not only does he decommit from Florida State, but he flips over to the Florida Gators. We've had plenty of discussions on here, D-Lou, about this young man and kind of a little bit of some chatter that, something going on in Gainesville and they were working hard to try to get him to flip over. And during the season, or at least the early parts of the season, him staying to his word and say, I'm committed to Florida State, Mike Norvell and Tony Tokarz. I'm sticking with the Seminoles. But a couple months later, you can't blame the young man as well here, but he ends up flipping over to your rival down there with Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. Your thoughts on this, Dustin?
Yeah, it's certainly disappointing because, like you said, Tramel, who had been committed to Florida State for well over a year, said that he was locking things down over the summer. At the time, he was kind of considering maybe taking an official visit to Florida, and that could have changed some things in that recruitment at the time, but he chose to stick with FSU. And then, obviously you get into the season, the struggles begin. Trammell suffered a season-ending injury very early on in his senior campaign. And after that, he put out a statement on social media as well and said, he was focused on rehabbing from that injury. He was still recruiting from FSU, planning to enroll in December. And I mean, that has just kind of, faded away a little bit throughout the season as the losses have continued to pile up, and, backed off from that commitment to FSU last Thursday, was in Gainesville last weekend for a visit to watch their win over LSU, and then pulls the trigger and commits to the Gators on Sunday. So at least optically, it doesn't look good for Florida State to lose a guy who's been committed to them for so long, who's been a recruiter for this class for as long as he's been a member of it, since April 2023. So it doesn't look good on paper, but we talked about it a little bit. Florida State, they're involved heavily with former Michigan commitment Carter Smith, and hoping to get him for an official visit before the end of the month. And there's already been a couple recruiting predictions from a couple of those different websites predicting him to commit to Florida State. So we'll see if FSU is able to close on that. If they're able to add Smith, they kind of replace him there, or replace Jones there with a higher rated prospect and someone who's got a lot of upside. But Florida State, a lot of work to do on this recruiting class over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. Like I was saying earlier, and you ask, okay, Florida, they're 5-5 on the season. They've got a young quarterback there, true freshman, that you can tell is making strides and is a different caliber of a talent as well. But, he still is going to be expected to sit behind. Trammell sticks with his commitment there to Florida. But you also see, too, just the outside factor of where Florida State is as a program right now, which we did not think it would be at this place, gentlemen. We thought going into the season, we gave a hard time on Billy Napier. We expected him not to make it through week 4, and look at what it is now. You got Florida and their administration saying that they're sticking with Billy Napier moving forward. And now you're starting to see an exodus from Florida State's commitments, and there might be more. Most likely will be more where they're entertaining or going to Florida, which we're about to talk about another one with a 3-star offensive lineman. But specifically sticking with Trammell Jones, it's just, what can you do? And definitely with what Florida State's put out on the field as a product and the offensive line, you have so many kind of offensive questions as well. And two, you got to think about it on Florida State's perspective. They're going to rehaul a new offensive staff and a new offensive coordinator, and depends on what that's going to entail. A quarterback's coach too. And a lot of things are going to be shaken up. So this is where it's not a crazy shock. It's not a crazy shock to anybody, but it's certainly sucks. You don't want to lose your blue chip quarterback to a rival down in Gainesville.
Definitely not. But, I do think that this could work out for Florida State in the end by landing Carter. Like I said, I think he's got a lot of upside, as he makes that move to the college level. Definitely more of a dual threat than Trammell, who's, basically a traditional pocket passer. I think Trammell's passing is a little bit more advanced at this time, but, we'll see how Smith develops and, how his mechanics progress and things like that once he does get to the college level. And if he's working with Tony Tokars or another quarterback's coach, depending on how things work out over the next couple of weeks. But in the end, this could be a net positive for Florida State.
Yep. On the other side there in the trenches for Daniel Pierre-Louis, he decides to decommit from Florida State, 3-star offensive lineman. He actually flips over to also Billy Napier and the Gators. Probably saw this one coming, Dustin, and, with Alex Atkins being let go of his services at Florida State, there's a lot that we're looking at in that entire offensive line room that Alex Atkins brought in. But yeah, this one going down to Gainesville and the SEC.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily saw it coming, but I think we were wondering if there was going to be some impact, from that Alex Atkins firing. And we saw the statements on social media from some of those prospects, but we didn't really see any movement on the recruiting trail. And now you get your first loss here since the dismissal of Coach Atkins and Pierre-Louis over the weekend. He was in Gainesville for an official visit. So, I mean, he was there with Trammell Jones, and, he decides to flip that commitment yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, to go over there to the Gators. But, 3-star offensive lineman, Florida State extended him a scholarship offer over the summer, and then he made the decision to commit to FSU back there in the middle of October. So, I mean, just 4 or 5 weeks after that original commitment to FSU, he's already flipping to the Florida Gators. So, in a span of less than a week, Florida flips 2 commitments from FSU's class. And, we've seen the news from earlier today, 4-star running back commit Byron Lewis is going to be in Gainesville for an official visit this weekend. So, I mean, they're continuing to work on other commitments in Tribe 25 as well.
I don't know why I said Louis. I don't know. Louis just sounds more fun, but it's definitely Lewis. But here's the deal, though. Here's some optimism. We were talking about in their production meeting. Big one here. Florida State, flip. Punter kicker from USF. This is a big
Fire up the war chant, plant the spear.
Yeah. Plant it. Did Norvell tweet it? Did he tweet out the
I don't think so. I don't think he did.
Oh, dang it. That's got to be one of the first times he's done that. Did he do it when the Twins committed? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I honestly, I don't think so.
I don't think I've seen it. Can you go see and check for us? But yeah, this one's a flip from USF down here in Tampa, where I'm at. But Bruno Rui, did I say that right?
Reyes.
Oopsies. My bad. I'm just ruining people's last names tonight. My bad.
Coach Norvell has not tweeted since October 15th.
What was his last tweet there?
It was a commitment. It's just one of the big guys for the class of 25.
It was Pierre Lewis.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Tragic.
Awkward.
Might want to delete that one.
Yeah, I might want to delete that one, actually. Anyways, USF flip. Love to see it. Shout out to Coach Barfield, Florida State's kicking coach.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we want to laugh at it and make fun of it, FSU is going to have to replace Ryan Fitzgerald and Alex Mastermano following this season. So it's important to get some more talent in that specialist room, one that has been a strength throughout the Norvell era in Tallahassee. And, this is the first time that he's going to have to replace his kicker and punter since he arrived in Tallahassee. So it's important to get this right. And Bruno Reyes, one of the top kickers and punters in the country, a 3-star prospect on 247 Sports. But when you look at some of the kicking services, namely Cole's Kicking, that's the big one a lot of people use. He's the number 2 punter and the number 3 kicker in the 2025 class. I mean, this is a guy with obviously a talented leg, committed to USF over the summer after he picked up an offer, but with Florida State giving him what he referenced on social media as a full scholarship offer, it seemed like that was too much for him to pass up, and he's going to flip. He made that flip, and he'll be signing with FSU. Not sure if he's an early enrollee or someone that will be coming in the summer. That'll be something that we'll figure out. But, I personally believe he'll probably be starting out at punter with the Seminoles. FSU signed Jake Weinberg, one of the top kickers in that 2024 class just a year ago, and he's backed up Ryan Fitzgerald while redshirting, just kind of learning the position and how to operate day to day. And, he's been pretty good for the most part with his performance in practice. So I think he's probably likely the heir to Ryan Fitzgerald, but Reyes could come in and compete with Mac Chiumento, walk-on redshirt sophomore punter, for the right to replace Alex Mastermano. So we'll see how it all works out once he does get to Tallahassee.
Let's jump into some transfer portal stuff, because this is going to be a big discussion for the coming weeks and months, as Florida State is going to work very hard and building what they can, because I think we're going to expect a heavy amount of attrition as well from Florida State's roster. But on last Wednesday, Boston College junior quarterback Thomas Castellanos, it was reported that he's expected to hit the transfer portal. Bill O'Brien, Boston College's head coach, announced that he wasn't with the team and wouldn't travel for their SMU game. He was 61.5% this season, had 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Definitely not the same kind of year he had previously. Definitely in the run game, where he had 215 rushing attempts, 1,100 rushing yards, and 13 touchdowns. And as we know, too, definitely in last year's game, but then, of course, this year's game, just the kind of ability that he can bring to that offense for Boston College. Things just didn't seem to click there with Bill O'Brien. But as things start to change here very soon for Florida State and what they end up doing and their coaching search and looking at an offensive coordinator, depends to a play caller, quarterbacks coach, you start eyeing down, potential transfer quarterbacks while you're also keeping an eye on what Florida State's going to have on their roster with Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek, what kind of decisions they end up making as well on their own end. But now we got to eye down a lot of these quarterbacks that enter the transfer portal, gentlemen.
Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be one where Florida State is probably going to pursue. I think they're looking, if they are going to bring in a transfer quarterback, you want someone that's a little bit more proven with their production as a passer and also just more consistent. I think Castellanos, you look at his stats, he took some progression this year as a passer. Didn't seem like he was really much of a fit for that offense that Bill O'Brien is trying to install there as the new head coach at Boston College. He's from the state of Georgia, someone that Florida State recruited out of high school. But at the time, FSU was pursuing him as a running back and not a quarterback. And that was a big reason that he ended up committing to UCF at the time, because they were going to allow him to play QB and then made that transfer to Boston College. I mean, just personally, based off what we've seen in the past and how Florida State has evaluated Castellanos, I don't think that if they were going to take a shot at him in the transfer portal, it would be to see if he would convert to a different position. But I don't believe that they'd pursue him at quarterback.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Obviously, Castellanos has a lot of the same things that Jordan Travis brought to the table with his ability to use his legs, but I don't think he's anywhere near the passer that Travis ended up being over his last couple of seasons. And Castellanos is already a junior; he's going into his senior season, so it's not like he has a lot of time to continue to progress. And I don't know if it's going to be the exact fit. We'll see. Whoever they end up bringing in as their offensive coordinator in Tallahassee, we'll see what kind of quarterbacks he likes. But yeah, I'd be kind of surprised to see Florida State jump all over this one.
And this is a move you can't mess up. I mean, you've got to make one that is going to bring you success in 2025, because we could very well be talking about Mike Norvell's job on the line, depending on if Florida State gets off to a really poor start next season. I mean, that pushback from the fans and boosters, that could force the administration's hand. So this is a critical move when you're talking about Norvell's tenure in Tallahassee, and to take that risk on Castellanos, I think it's just too great for Florida State, and especially when you saw the way that things backfired this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Dustin, because I was going to say Florida State at this position, they've got to be very important on who they end up bringing in, because it did not work with DJ. They thought they had something there that would be able to be a bridge, but also to bring you to hopefully, another ACC championship this year. But with that product that DJ had for them, it just didn't work, didn't click. And, offense as a whole just wasn't great either. But looking at, what they're going to bring in quarterback wise, I think you pair it with probably most likely an offensive coordinator. And, as the season ends here in a few weeks, we'll dive it deeper into some of those candidates that would be bringing in potentially someone that you would have at the quarterback position. And interested to see how that affects to the current, like I was saying earlier, the current quarterback room and what fits the mold of those guys. Because I think Mike Norvell sees a lot of promise from definitely their younger one with Luke Kromenhoek, and definitely want to keep him in the fold. And the same probably goes for Brock Glenn as well, but those two are going to make a decision for themselves. But at the end of the day, though, those two don't have the experience, nor have they shown you yet that they can take you to where I think you need to be at an 8-win season in 2025 to be safe for Mike Norvell. Let's jump into another big one here, gentlemen. Florida State assistant coach, Florida State's defensive backs coach, Patrick Surtain Sr. has reportedly completed an initial interview with his alum school of Southern Miss. We were kind of talking about this in our last episode, so if you were listening to that, you're probably not too shocked to hear this, but there are a handful of other candidates too reported that are in contention for this job, including Georgia Tech offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner, Georgia tight end coach Todd Hartley, and Auburn offensive coordinator Derek Nix. Faulkner right now is likely the top choice for this gig, but still, nonetheless, though, Patrick Surtain Sr. getting a little bit of love here and getting some interest there from his alum.
Yeah, and it is important to note that it was specifically mentioned in this report that these interviews didn't take place in person. So, I mean, this was likely just some type of preliminary phone call or something like that. But, Pat Surtain obviously played at Southern Miss. He's in the school's Hall of Fame and, had a really good career there before moving on to the NFL. And, you look at what he did as a high school coach here in Florida at American Heritage, winning multiple state championships. Obviously, this would be a step up, and there would be a lot more on his plate as a college coach or a college head coach. But, who knows what his aspirations are at this point of his career. And, you look at what he's done lately, obviously has that experience, the 1 year in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins, now in his second year at Florida State as the defensive backs coach. With all the changes going on around him, maybe he decides to take that leap if that position is ultimately offered to him. Like you said, there's a lot of other candidates in contention there. Derek Nix also played at Southern Miss, and he's been a coach for a long time, a lot of SEC experience and FBS experience. So if they're looking for someone a little bit more proven, I think Buster Faulkner or Nix would probably be along those lines. Surtain a little bit less proven, but you bring in a guy who's proven what he can do on the recruiting trail, has developed some solid cornerbacks here in his 2 years at FSU, and he brings a lot of energy to the job.
Damn good recruiter, and looking at what he's been able to do, put some guys in the league. Look at Jarian Jones there with the Jaguars, and of course, we're going to talk about him here as we've been doing every week when we go through our pro Noles. But Renardo Green has been an absolute stud, and he turned into a true lockdown corner for Florida State in his last season last year, and you just got to see the development there. And I thought too, Coach Surtain putting him in the right place as well was big. But just a well-proven coach at this position group. I don't know if it's the right timing potentially just because of these other candidates, like you were saying there, Dustin, and, some guys that might be at a better choice for the time being. But the more that he continues to build his coaching career, it just continues to grow. And there's a lot of respect for him as a coach, not only on the collegiate level, but also in the NFL and the pros. So, you just kind of get nervous though, because you get a little initial interview like that, something like that. There's other schools as well that might be highly interested if some other jobs open up across the country that might give you bigger opportunities.
Yep. Yeah, like you just said, and it's just speculation, but with that news coming out, maybe he's looking around for a change, with all the moving pieces around him. And, I don't want to say it would make sense, but we obviously saw Florida State decide to move Randy Shannon, who does have the co-defensive coordinator title, but FSU decided to give him control of the defense instead of Pat Surtain for these final 2 games. And, potentially the next natural step in his progression as a college coach is to lead a defense at the FBS level. And I do wonder if maybe some other, maybe like a group of 5 team or some other Power 4 team would potentially give him a shot to lead their defense. And if that would be enough to sway him to leave Tallahassee.
There was a former Nole FSU quarterback that gave some comments on Mike Norvell and play calling. This was EJ Manuel on the College Game Day podcast and gave his take when asked about Mike Norvell and should he continue being the pure play caller for Florida State. And he's of the opinion of him continuing to call plays for Florida State. He says, I don't think he should give up calling plays because if you think of 2 seasons ago when Florida State got back to winning 10-plus games, I think they won the bowl game over Oklahoma. Coach Norvell was calling plays that year. Before that, it was Kenny Dillingham, who is now the head coach at Arizona State, having a great year as well. Got into the truth of things, though, having Jordan Travis on the team, helping out that offense so much, saying, but I felt like Coach Norvell and Jordan Travis, and I mentioned Jordan Travis because he had a dude at quarterback. He had an eraser, a guy that can make those plays. They were on the same page. But for whatever reason, it just seemed like there was no telepathy between Coach Norvell and DJU, or even those two other young quarterbacks this season. So I would say no. I think that would be an overreaction. In fact, yeah, you can hire a coordinator, but I still believe in Coach Norvell's ability to call plays because he's called good plays. Guys have dropped balls and guys have not made throws. That's ultimately what it's come down to, is execution. Let's see what VZ's take is here first.
I take it. Yeah, because how many times have we seen a wide receiver screen go for no gain this year?
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps happening. And granted, a lot of it is due to how poor the offensive line is playing. And there's only so many things you can call when the offensive line is that bad. But we've said it a lot over the last few months that the offense is boring. There's no innovation. There's some lack of there's some lack of execution, but there's also just, a lot of being bland and a lot of being predictable. So I've made my case that I think they should get someone else in, even if it's just to bring some fresh ideas. But like I've said the last few weeks, even last year, I didn't love the play calling, and that team won 13 games. So I would like to see them upgrade there.
Well, I think EJ's a smart guy, because I've kind of echoed some of those same sentiments over the last couple of weeks. I don't think Florida State and Mike Norvell.
So you think you're smart. So yeah, EJ Manuel's smart guy. So then you're like, and then I also echo the same.
Just because he has my opinion. But I've said the same thing. I don't think that Florida State and Mike Norvell should necessarily give up on him as a play caller because of one bad season, due to what we've seen in the past. And, there were some frustrating moments during that 2023 season, but you look at what they've done the last 2 years, and then also what Norvell's track record goes back to at Memphis and his time before that. Historically, he's been a very good play caller. He's fielded productive offenses. He's gotten guys to the NFL. This year, everything has obviously gone wrong from a play calling standpoint, from an execution standpoint. The players that you have out on the field running that offense, nothing has worked out. But like EJ Manuel said, I don't think that FSU has to necessarily overreact to make that change. We've heard Mike Norvell talk about in these press conferences, he's going to evaluate it and make that decision. And with some of these potential offensive coordinator candidates that we've heard, it seems like Florida State is exploring, the possibility of Mike Norvell handing over those play calling duties to that potential hire. So we'll see how it works out. I think all options are on the table, but at the very least, I think it's a good sign that FSU's head coach is willing to adapt to that change if he thinks it's the best outcome for the program.
Well, he says he is. Just because he's giving some coach speak in a press conference doesn't mean he actually means it.
Well, we'll see what happens.
I'm in the mix of both here, because I think there is points that execution was shitty this year. There's a lot of bad execution, a lot of different ways all around. We've named plenty. I don't really want to go back into it. We're going to see it again on Saturday. We're going to see it one more time in that UF game. But yes, there's bad execution where there's probably some potential for more of those explosive plays, and there definitely were. There was chances for that. But I do think there has had to be a change, because I think the offense has gone stale. I think defensive coordinators understand what Mike Norvell is trying to do, definitely when he's limited at the quarterback position. I look at other colleges across the country, and definitely when teams, they lose their quarterback early or they're out for the game, but still that offense is still able to work. It's able to show life. There's actual life there, and there's no life even behind your two younger quarterbacks and Kromenhoek and Glenn. There's just nothing there. It's just so predictable. And I think there's got to be a certain change on the philosophy and innovation of Mike Norvell's offense, because it can't just be the same of what you had in the years past, or even what you had in the undefeated regular season with Jordan Travis, guys like Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, Keon Kellman saving you on desperate third downs. You can't rely on that all the time, and they're not going to be able to rely on it in 2025 either. Whenever we talk about this transfer portal and the quarterback future.
It's just you don't end up dead last in scoring offense and third to last in offensive yardage output just with lack of execution. A lot of that is play calling as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That O-line's just so bad, though, man.
Oh no,
Like
correct.
they ruin.
Trust me, I'm
They
totally
ruin a
with
lot
you
of-
there. I'm totally with you there. But again, dead last in all of FBS. That's come on.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think there are some areas where Norvell has to look himself in the mirror because, like we mentioned with some of those wide receiver screens, it's the personnel out there at the end of the day or the situation. We think back to the one, I can't remember if it was the Cal game or the Memphis game, but you've got Ja'Kai Douglas out there trying to block for Jaylen Brown. It just doesn't feel like you're putting your players in the right position for success in some of those scenarios. So that is something that Florida State, they're going to need to address and figure out quickly this offseason to use the pieces that they have the way they are meant to be used. Ja'Kai Douglas, he shouldn't be the primary blocker on any play.
No, it should be your bigger guys and Kentron, Darion. If you can't fully have full consistency of them catching either, utilize them in the friggin' blocking, man. That's a thing where I don't think the personnel usage, like you were just saying there, Dustin, it was atrocious this season. It was atrocious all throughout. And, now he's owning up to it in press conferences as much as he can. But yeah, it's the way that you're utilizing some of your talent just didn't work. And also, too, it goes into coaching, and nobody wanted to block worth a damn anyways. So both on the offensive line and wide receiver room. Didn't really matter. All right, let's jump into Michael Alford. We heard from him during FSU's Boosters Town Hall. Good amount of stuff here, I want to say. I think you have coach speak, and then you have athletic director speak. And right here, talking about the coaching search, there's definitely a lot of AD speak here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go through this quote here on what he said about the coaching search. He says, the search progress has already started. Really, the names, I can't give them, of course. Let me say, the interest of people reaching out to us has been overwhelming. You would recognize a lot of the names. And because of that, it shows the belief in Coach Norvell. The people that have reached out to me or others, they know this program is going to be back. I've talked to numerous coaches, head coaches across the country, talked to administrators. I've even talked to commissioners. I mean, everyone says you're going to be right back, and that is our anticipation. You believe there's a lot of head coaches and people interested in the job? I mean, it is Florida State. But interested to see y'all's take on this. If, I'm interested to see what the caliber of those candidates are, because there could be some head coaches that are in that lower tier that could be interested as well. I'm interested. I'd be interested in coming and coaching. I feel like we all would like to coach that offensive line and give a shot at it at this point. But interested to hear y'all's thoughts on this. Some big names. There's big names out here. There's big names.
I was gonna let you go first, but I surprisingly don't doubt that there's been names we have heard of reach out and inquire about the openings. Now, are they names we know because they're good or bad is the question. That he didn't specify that. I do think there's going to be a lot of interest in these jobs just because, the brand is that big. And if they play a hand in Florida State somehow, I don't think this will happen, but if Florida State somehow goes 9-3 or 10-2 next year, thanks to either dominant defense or dominant offense, their names become hot names for head coaching jobs elsewhere. But at the same time, I don't think that's very realistic. And we'll see who Florida State ends up getting. But I really don't think it's that much of AD speak to say that there's been a lot of interest in the jobs.
Yeah, he said tremendous interest, not tremendous candidates, right?
Correct.
So there you go. That answers it for me. I don't know. Is that all you got there, Alford? Dustin, I think you should be the assistant to Alford. Honestly, you give some good, candidates for him.
Well, if I get a pay raise, sure, I'll take it.
I think you would. Maybe, I don't know. Depends if Florida State can get back on track or not. But I don't know. I mean, it's like I said. I think you got to say what you got to say. But I mean, to me, I think there's a lot of respect for Mike Norvell. I think he's very likable. I think, as we know, in his coaching tree, highly respectable from what he's been able to do in his young coaching career on the collegiate level. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to coach with him and, bring Florida State back to what it's supposed to be, which was in 2023, getting 13 wins in a regular season. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. But I think also, too, you look on the other side and like, man, what happened to Mike? How did this happen? And, he didn't expect this to happen. He thought hold 180 of a season of not even be able to reach the ACC championship again and not even being in contention to fight for it. Like, what happened to Mike? And I think that's something that is probably in the back of the heads of some of these people that are interested or maybe that haven't reached out yet. To be honest with you, it goes in both sides here for Mike just because of what the season has gone through.
Yeah, but I mean, this is where a long coaching tree and at least the way that Florida State has operated with some of the events they've held in the offseason, this is where some of that kind of stuff can hang out or help out. Because obviously Norvell, before Memphis, he worked at Pittsburgh, worked at Arizona State, worked at Tulsa, worked at some of these programs where he's been able to build relationships with coaches who have risen up and have taken better jobs throughout the years that, now could potentially come to Tallahassee due to that past relationship. And then also the last couple of years, with Florida State holding that annual mega camp on campus and not only having thousands of different high school recruits come in there and participate and work out, but they're having these other coaches from different schools, whether that be FBS programs down to even, D2. I think there were some NAIA schools out there, just to have these coaches around and, not only let them evaluate recruits, but they're able to talk to these guys and foster those relationships. And some of those guys come back for years and years and years. So, whenever you've got that large outreach of Florida State is doing, this is where that can benefit you some because, a lot of coaches, like you said, respect Mike Norvell, respect what he's built in Tallahassee and at Florida State. And I'm sure that there are plenty that would love to jump on board and help try and get this thing turned around.
And they also respect some of the names on his coaching tree. I mean, we see Kellen Dillingham having a lot of success at Arizona State this year. Obviously, Dan Lanning at Oregon's had a few good seasons, and that tree is only going to continue to grow as Norvell gets the right assistants, and he just didn't have the right assistants. And granted, that's on him. And hopefully he's realized those mistakes and can fix those for the coming years. But, he's already built an impressive coaching tree in a short span of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael Alford also spoke about his relationship with Mike Norvell and the 2024 struggles. He said, "I can tell you that Coach Norvell and I speak weekly. You've heard me numerous years talk about daily communication that we have, the shared vision, the partnership that we have. And I would take that with President McCullough and our board of trustees and our chairman, Peter Collins, and your chairman, Warner Peacock, and the boosters." Also said, "Mike and I have a very, as I've mentioned, comfortable, candid relationship. There is a mutual respect for one another. He understands my role. Of course, I understand his role. We have a shared vision, but we are going to work together to get this corrected." And Dustin, and also too VZ, but more you and I, Dustin, we're at these pressers post game as well. Michael Alford's very hands-on with this coaching staff, and definitely Mike Norvell. Those two guys kind of hand in hand at any kind of Florida State football event that we've attended, with the media being there and availability. But those two definitely are very close, and that went into getting Mike Norvell back to the program that it was supposed to be. How you reached that ACC championship and you're getting your chance at a playoff berth and fighting for a potential national championship. And Michael Alford did a lot in order to help that to be the case last year. And so, now that relationship, that strength that they have with one another is going to be pivotal in order to get the Seminoles back on track starting in 2025.
Yeah, it seems like they have a really good relationship, and I think that's going to be an important piece in getting this thing rolling back in the right direction. Just to have the head coach and the athletic director on the same page, they're able to have these conversations. They're in contact often, with each other. We heard Michael Alford talk about those conversations after every game, and they have talks every week. So, I have to imagine that these coaching changes for Florida State didn't come as much of a surprise to Michael Alford based on those conversations with Mike Norvell and the evaluations that they've been putting forth throughout this entire season. So, I definitely think it helps, when you think about this scenario that Florida State is in, and you also think back to some of the previous head coaches, like by the end of the Jimbo Fisher era, it was pretty palpable with the Florida State administration. I mean, there was, I don't want to say dislike, but those two parties, they weren't on the same page. They weren't working well together. It's the complete opposite with Mike Norvell and Michael Alford. Even though the product on the field has been bad in 2024, I think with the way that things are run off the field at Florida State, that could really help in this turnaround.
I want to go to what Mike Norvell said earlier this week on Monday during his presser, talking about coaching hires and the ideal timing for that and what goes on during all that kind of stuff. Talking about, just going after some of the coaches that are currently coaching right now. Like, it kind of gets tricky. That I couldn't imagine what that goes into and how you go about it. But Mike kind of opened up a little bit about it, saying probably out of the respect for all the people in the regular season, we're working through the process. But like I said last week, ideally, when the regular season ends, you'd like to be able to have a really strong direction of where it's going. And there might be guys that could potentially continue to be playing where either announcements, agreements that are made, we'll see if that's potential options. He said there could be guys that assume roles really quick after the season ends. That's kind of ... There's still a lot of ebb and flow before decisions are made on who's going to take those positions, and obviously all the conversations that surround that. He was also talking about that this last week during the bye week. A lot went into, starting to get some names down, also to just trying to construct what the future is going to look like, and probably listen out their candidates, and also too what they're doing internally, because they did move on from two coordinators and the assistant. So a lot of stuff going on in-house, I'm sure, too, with the team, and making sure things are going smoothly, because you also got to figure out what you're going to do this week during practices, and making sure who's going to which position group and who's going to take the role and take the reins, and how that's going to flow through your still game weeks, because there is still 2 more games left for the Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah, it's a tough time to make a coaching change in this day and age of college football, especially in 2024. With the early signing period for high school prospects being moved up, that opens on December 4th, and then you have the transfer portal. I believe it's on December 9th that gets going for 20 days. It's been cut down from 30 to 20 days for the winter window this year. So it's just, it's not an ideal time for anything. And now you've got the expanded college football playoff. So, depending on who Florida State is pursuing, you could have a candidate in a conference championship game vying for a playoff spot at the same time that Florida State is in the early signing period. The transfer portal window is opening, and guys from FSU are hitting the portal. Guys from other schools are hitting the portal and wondering if FSU is going to be interested in them. They don't have a coach hired yet. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to figure out over the next couple of weeks, and like you mentioned, that Mike Norvell was saying that there could be the possibility that agreements are signed, but that person's maybe not necessarily still in Tallahassee and finishing out their season with their respective team. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces, I feel like, and then we're only talking about the 3 changes right now. The coordinator positions and the wide receiver coach, but in 2 more weeks, when Florida State they announce potentially more staff changes. I mean, it's going to be a lot happening. December is going to be the busiest and the most important month concerning Florida State in a long time.
Yeah, just think about how many names we mentioned last week that are on playoff teams, between Chris Hampton at Oregon, the 2 Indiana offensive coordinators with Shanahan and Sinceri. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are going to be playing postseason football deep into December, and that's going to make things tough for recruiting, the transfer portal, etc. And Florida State's going to probably have to find that balance of finding coordinators that, yes, they might be in a bowl game, but they're willing to get to Florida State ahead of time, while also getting some of that winning culture back in the building, because it's clearly not in the building right now.
Dustin, speaking of buildings, we're going to need you outside the more early. I mean, I think once the season wraps up, you
might as well just buy a tent, get some portable chargers.
We can rent you a tent. We can put that on the company card. We didn't spend too much money on travel this year. Didn't need to. not worth going to see the product that was out there on the field. So I think we saved up enough. We can put you out there in a tent. We can get you AC if you need be, because I know you want it cold. So
sounds great, but I mean, if we've saved up all this money, just give me an intern and slap them out there.
Damn, jeez, come on, man. We got all right. We do have Robert. So damn, Robert, if you're listening in,
all right, Robert.
Dustin just said you're camping out outside the moor. I think actually he'd be about it. I don't think he'd be against it.
No, Robert's got to go home. Robert's got to go home for the holidays.
Oh, well, looks like it's you, bud. You're going out
Tommy.
there. I'm going to say Tommy, yeah. I was going to say we give Robert's 21, right? You can have beer. I was going to say we can just drop him off 24. No, never mind. No. That's what we do here at NoleGameday. Alcohol fixes everything. Anyways,
don't commit a crime on the stream, please.
No, I won't. Damn, he's not 21. Never mind. I never said that.
It's only a sophomore.
I was 21, but I was older. I had another year of school, though. I was one of those where I needed another pre-K.
Yeah,
because
got held back.
I didn't get held back.
Couldn't put your square blocks and your circle blocks together.
Kind of sounds like you got held back.
I didn't get held back. I was born in August. School starts there. Like, maybe another year might do you well. And that's what I did. I didn't get held back in pre-K. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about. Anyways, let's keep going here. Chip Long was in attendance this week at practices. D-Lou, did you notice who that was when he was there? He was there. That's what we're hearing. Former offensive coordinator and tight ends coach for Southern Miss with ties to Mike Norvell.
I didn't even know that.
What could be working here? What could be happening? Mike Norvell commented on it and said, I have a lot of respect for him. It was a tough year for him and Coach Hall there at Southern Miss. He had an opportunity to be able to come in and spend a few days with us. He said we had another coach a couple weeks ago that was here in a very similar situation. Didn't get to go out there, Dustin. It was on lockdown. No, couldn't see who it was. That's why we need you out there. We need you out there in the tent, keeping an eye out on who's coming here. But he said, I think it's always great when you get good people to come around and just kind of give an outside perspective of what they see. And then just to continue, we're all growing and all learning, which not lying there. Mike, you ain't lying there. But could Chip Long, could there be a little spot for him on this staff for Florida State, do you guys think, potentially? Or are we just overthinking things and it's a friend and he's wanting to come hang out a little bit and just see what's going on here? Because Chip Long does bounce around to a lot of other places.
We'll see how it goes. To me, it's a little bit curious that you would bring in a recently fired coach to be out there at your practices with 2 games remaining and, a failure of a season. There's nothing Chip Long can tell Mike Norvell that he doesn't already know by watching that offense operate. But, to me, I don't think that this is something that's just kind of a coincidence. We'll see how it works out. I think Florida State, they're at least potentially evaluating bringing Long onto their staff. I see a lot of people freaking out on social media since yesterday. I don't think that would be to be Florida State's next offensive coordinator.
No.
No,
absolutely not.
We're talking, Southern Miss. They're terrible. Chip Long, he was the offensive coordinator.
Damn.
I don't mean it like that, but they've had an awful year. Tate Rodemaker's not even playing, and they're still. They are bad. But anyway, they decided to move on from Chip after one season, as the offensive coordinator there. He's kind of bounced around a little bit over the last 5 years, but before that, worked with Mike Norvell for 4 years at Arizona State. At the time, Chip Long was the tight ends coach and the recruiting coordinator. Then he followed Norvell to Memphis, was his offensive coordinator for that first year in 2016. And he ends up getting a shot at Notre Dame as the offensive coordinator, which a role that he held for 3 years, had multiple tight ends that were selected in the NFL draft, and also did some work on the recruiting trail. So I think this is someone, if Florida State decides to make a change at tight ends coach and potentially move on from Chris Thompson after this year. And, I don't know if that's something that FSU is planning to do. But I think just based on the results of that position, on-field production, recruiting, it just hasn't been very consistent for Florida State over the last 5 years. And Chris Thompson, anyway, if you look at his coaching background, he's primarily been an offensive line coach throughout his entire career in college football. Never had coached tight ends before until he arrived at Florida State. So, I mean, to me, it makes sense, potentially replacing him with Chip Long with that diverse background, not only recruiting tight ends, but also developing them, getting them to the professional level, and then also what he's done at a recruiter at various stops. I mean, I think he's attributed with over 20 blue chip prospects, has recruited some guys like 5-star tight end Michael Mayer, who went to Notre Dame, now in the NFL. He recruited Cole Kmet, who's with the Chicago Bears. He recruited Mike Norvell's quarterback at Memphis. Brady White was a 4-star quarterback, signed with Arizona State, and then transferred to Memphis, and had a really good rest of his career there under Mike Norvell whenever he got that head coaching job. So I just think it's interesting. They've obviously got a lot of ties to each other. They've got a good relationship, and this could be a spot for Chip Long to revitalize his coaching career after bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, if he wants to be a tight ends coach, honestly, I'd be all for it. And there's even some other guys that he's been the primary recruiter for that you didn't mention, like N'Keal Harry, who was a first-round pick at Arizona State, Kalen Ballage, who had a lot of success at Arizona State, and then even Tommy Tremble, who was just a 3-star tight end and ended up becoming a 3rd-round pick out of Notre Dame a few years ago. So he's been able to not only recruit, but develop these guys and make them NFL draft picks. If he wants to be a tight ends coach or an offensive analyst, I say all for it. Anything more than that, I think he's overshooting himself a little bit.
Yeah, I think tight ends coach, that would be the high benchmark, but potentially bringing him in as a senior offensive analyst, or maybe even someone in a recruiting role. It seems like Florida State, they're going to make some changes to that department this offseason. I think there are a couple different ways that you could go, and we'll see how it all works out, if it works out at all. Maybe it does end up being a coincidence, but to me, this isn't a move that you just make randomly, to just have Chip Long stop by and hang out, and he's out there at practice. He's got a play sheet in his hand every time before the ball snap. He's checking that play sheet, looking up, watching the play, talking with Norvell.
Interesting. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm going to get that tent and generator going soon for you, Dustin. Let's jump into some NFL Noles, because NFL season is doing great right now. Hence the hat that I have on right now, and the record that my Steelers have after a big win on Sunday against Baltimore Ravens. I don't want to keep chirping about it, but I got me a damn good team. But other than that, there's some damn good NFL Noles out there right now that are playing well. Let's start off with Jalen Ramsey, who is just a cornerback. Usually, if you don't hear about him a lot during the season, they're doing a damn good job, and Jalen Ramsey is a stud right now. Possibly the top cornerback in the league. He's making himself an argument to be that. In his game against the Raiders, he had 5 solo tackles, 2 passes defended, and another interception added to his stat sheet. Derwin James, a lot of DBU showing out this past weekend. 10 total tackles, 7 solo tackles, and half a sack. Sticking in the secondary, too. We were talking about earlier. Nardo, Green, 7 solo tackles, 1 pass defended against Seattle. And then, too, of course, sticking on the defensive side, Braden Fisk is having a rookie season, man. This is so much fun. That Rams defense is so damn fun to watch, and what they have in that front 7. It's ridiculous what Sean McVay has, but he had 3 total tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. And jumping over to the offensive side, Jameis Winston balling there for the Cleveland Browns. 395 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against his former team and the New Orleans Saints. It was awesome to see the social media videos after the game, a lot of those Saints players coming over and giving him a lot of love. Those guys loved having him in the locker room there in New Orleans, along with the entire fan base, missing him. But yeah, man, a lot of NFL Noles making some balling, man. They're balling. It's so much fun to watch, because I'm a big Sunday guy and got Red Zone on, and you just see these guys making plays left and right. It's dope to see.
Also, Cam Akers had a receiving touchdown for the Minnesota Vikings. That was cool to see.
Yep. 36
yards. It's getting back to a weekly occurrence, man. I remember last year and throughout the offseason, we were kind of talking about it. Felt like NFL Noles was dwindling off a little bit, but
We didn't
we've
have
had a
much, man.
we've had a resurgence. I mean, this rookie class is really getting after it this year. And then, I mean, some of those veterans, Jalen Ramsey getting back into form after that injury a year ago, Jameis Winston getting another shot as a starter, Cam Akers coming back from that second Achilles tear and, having a productive campaign in Houston and then now in Minnesota as well. It's been a pretty fun season so far for FSU fans watching the NFL.
Dude, and some of those throws that Jameis was making, it was nasty. And I just wonder, too, if he can continue this stride and play good. I wish his defense would play well. Myles Garrett is spending too much time chirping about TJ Watt and winning Defensive Player of the Year that he can't do a damn thing on the defensive side of the ball for Jameis there. But Jameis throwing down some dots, man, and I think he looks good. You still get your sporadic Jameis Winston. That's just what it's going to be with him. But that team needed offensive play and 395 yards passing. Come on, dog. Come on. Let's jump into this Charleston quick preview.
Do you have to?
We have to do it. We have to do it. We only got 2 more of these, man. We got to enjoy these while they last, VZ.
You have no idea.
2024 team.
Usually I'll write our game previews after the podcast, or I'll at least have most of it done before the podcast. Today, I was like, I want to get this over with. I am tired of talking about this team. I don't want to think about this team. And this is probably the earliest Dustin has ever gotten the game preview because I think I had it to him by about 4:00 today.
Was it?
I was surprised.
You said what?
Was it under 1,000 words?
It was. It was like 850, I think.
That's saying something right there.
That's also a surprise.
Yeah.
Because my basketball previews have not.
No, I bet not. It's way more fun writing and maybe talking on a team. But hey, here's the deal. We still got to do our job. We're doing our thing. We enjoy talking football, and this is what it is. But here it is. I mean, I was laughing at it earlier. I was writing down in the production sheet. FSU 1-9 versus Charleston Southern 1-10. I mean, I thought someone was pranking me. I thought maybe I accidentally took a gummy before writing this and jumping into writing this for us. But this is awful. And it's awful when you're on the ACC network extra. You're not even just on the ACC network. You're on the ACC network extra. And I still don't know. Hopefully we'll see if I can even watch the game. I'm going to have to figure out a way. I might have to just F it. I guess I do have ESPN Plus. I found out, but it's a 1:30 kickoff. What is a 1:30 kickoff in college football? I've never heard of anything like that.
It's called a Saturday ruiner because you miss the end of the 12 o'clock games and you miss the beginning of the 3:30 games, and then you just go home and kill a 12-pack.
Is that what your plan is on Saturday?
Maybe a 24-pack. We'll see how the game goes.
Damn. Yeah, it could be a 24-pack, just depending on how this goes. But here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Florida State is facing an awful team. And Florida State's faced awful teams this year, but this is awful times 10. And their only win was against Furman on September 7th. After that, they have not seen a win, but can't say much about Florida State because their last win was against Cal on September 21st. These two teams aren't great, but the other, Charleston Southern and the FCS, they're god-awful. They're not great. Florida State should win this game. Just looking at some stats right here. Rob McCoy Jr. is Charleston Southern's quarterback. His stat sheet says 819 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And then Octavius Eason, hopefully, I don't know, we'll hear it on the broadcast to figure out if I destroyed his last name there.
Well, I wouldn't put too much faith in the ACC network getting something correct, so.
Yeah, I was about to say, I might not even watch it. They might run into commercials again. Dustin thought I was joking when we were watching the ACC network game. What game was that? Where all I heard was the cheerleaders and everything.
It was the UNC game.
Yeah, it was a UNC game, and they just cut to commercials right when they're going to the third down. And then they did it again 2 minutes later.
Yep.
I might not be able to see. I mean, who knows what we'll see? But that running back's only got 4 touchdowns on the season. Chris Roan is their wide receiver, 526 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. let's don't spend too much more time on this, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that production value, it's rough, I guess. And I saw, normally you've got your broadcasting team, you've got your 2 people in the booth, and you've got your sideline reporter. I saw this week there's not even a sideline reporter. So
damn, wow.
I don't know if they're calling this game. They might be calling this game virtually, for all I know.
Back to COVID when they would do it. Shout out to Arya. I know he would be calling games from at home from his living room. They might be virtually through a Zoom doing this. So I'd be completely fine with can you just like, Dustin, you Zoom us or something or whatever, and we just watch it from your perspective. It might be even better because God knows what kind of product we're going to get from the ACC network. Extra.
Only if I can keep the audio on mute because you don't want to hear what I'm going to be saying for 4 quarters of football. But I mean, man, this is as bottom of the barrel as it gets. You've got one of the worst teams in the FBS, Florida State, 1-9, 6 straight losses, hasn't won a game in 60 days. And then you've got somehow even worse. You've got one of the worst teams in the FCS, Charleston Southern, 1-10, 9 straight losses, 0-8 in conference play for the first time in school history. You mentioned their lone win back on September 7th. That was 74 days ago. I mean, these 2 teams, they don't even know what a win looks like at this point.
They also don't know what scoring looks like because you called Charleston Southern the Florida State of FCS this year. It's pretty accurate because I think Charleston Southern won that one game by scoring 24 points. Since then, I don't think they've cracked 21. So sounds pretty familiar to Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State averaging less than 14 points a game. Charleston Southern is averaging 14.8, which, if you want to know, that's 120th out of 123 in the FCS. That's not good. Florida State is 133 out of 134. Actually, I think they're 134.
Yeah, they're 130. They're 134 now.
Yeah, and the offensive performance, the scoring hasn't been good for Charleston Southern. Making me crack up, but
this is
only 260.
I can't believe we're previewing this. Really,
267.4 yards of total offense per game. That's 117th, and they've also committed 20 turnovers and thrown three pick sixes. So
damn, that's pretty impressive. Hey, AZ might get you one. Who knows?
Florida State, this is 2 pick sixes, right?
This is awful.
SMU and Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other pick sixes I'm missing?
I hope FSU doesn't throw one and Jalen Brown's on the field.
Was there one against UNC in the early part of the game?
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
I think it's just 2. So you've got FSU 2 pick sixes, Charleston Southern 3 pick sixes. That's my stat of the week.
That's all we need to know, gentlemen. Let's jump over.
3 pick sixes given up. They didn't get 3 pick sixes. Yeah. They threw 3 pick sixes.
Hey.
I can't believe FanDuel has this.
We don't have anything outside. This is all we got.
We can't even make a parlay out of it.
Yeah, you can just pick the spread. You can pick the over/under.
That's about it.
Do you think Florida State's gonna score more than 34 points?
The fact the spread is 33.5.
That's win by 34 points.
I know.
Yeah.
There's no shot. I don't care. They could be playing a Pop Warner team. There's no shot.
I think this is all we've got right here, gentlemen. I think we got to take the spread at plus 33.5 for Charleston Southern, and then the under at 44.5.
I would agree with that.
Right?
You guys got the under?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Trying to do math.
So. I'm just going with my gut now, and it's been working for a while. So
I guess I'm technically under.
Basically, how it usually goes for me is I'll have a score in mind, and then I'll just take 10 points off of it. That's how this
for which team?
Usually, just in total.
Well, that's our bets right there. Under 44.5, and that plus 33.5, and you only get plus 144 on FanDuel because there's nothing else you can bet on. You can't even do money line, man.
But if you put $100,000 down, you get 200 grand.
100 grand gets you 144 grand. $44 grand of profit. Well, I don't have that really to do. So, score prediction time. Who's excited? Who's excited?
Oh, it's me, isn't it? Oh my God.
Yeah, you get to treat us. You're the treat. Yeah. What do you got?
I've got Florida State winning, and I'm not even confident in it, which is sad.
Damn, for real.
Because this Charleston Southern team is not good, as we can tell. They are just not a good football team. They should be undersized. They should be way under talented, but Florida State stinks, so it's only going to matter so much. I've got FSU winning 23-9, and I can't believe I even picked them to score in the 20s because that just sounds absurd.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, it doesn't matter how undersized you are going against Florida State's offensive line. I will say that. I'll go real quick. You want to go, Dustin?
I think it's my turn. What do you mean?
It is Dustin's turn.
Go ahead. I'm just excited to give my score prediction. I get to predict a win for Florida State.
He's trying to hop ahead of me, but
I know.
Florida State, not a good football team. Charleston Southern, somehow an even worse football team. So,
but as it should be.
I was going into this game, like I've been looking at the last, I don't know, six weeks or so, fully expecting to predict FSU to lose this game. But considering how bad Charleston Southern is, we've talked about some of the stats, 0-8 in conference play, 9 straight losses. I just can't pick that FCS team to beat FSU. If it was a middle of the pack FCS team, I'd be seriously up here.
Yeah, like I should have said this. If this was the North Alabama game last year, North Alabama, I'm picking them to win by 15. Like, it's just not even a debate.
They might have. But, considering the opponent and I think the coaching changes, that might benefit FSU in a positive way, just to have some new voices coaching-wise there for the players. And I think maybe the players have seen, like, what this season has done. It's now cost people their jobs, and hopefully that'll get them to rally a little bit and play a little bit harder. For an ugly game, I'm going to go with an ugly score. So I've got Florida State 29, Charleston Southern 11.
Damn, 29. Wow, almost to that 30 mark.
That is gross. You weren't kidding.
Nope. That is ugly. I'm going to just keep it straight with you. I got Florida State winning it, and it's going to be 26-14. 26-14. No, actually, no, I'm joking. I'm not expecting Charleston Southern to score 14.
I'm not expecting Florida State to score 26.
Oh, I thought you had Charleston Southern with 26.
I got to make the Nole GIFs guy on Twitter work for it here, so I got to mess with him. I got to make him watch a little bit longer for the YouTube retention. I'm actually going to go Florida State 26, Charleston Southern 6. That sounds about right there. That makes sense, right? Unless some crazy thing happens, right?
26 is also a gross number.
It's going to happen. I know.
2 touchdowns, 4 field goals, baby.
Ryan Fitzgerald. It's going to be like Chris Boswell for the Steelers.
Or three touchdowns, a field goal, and a safety.
Or they missed some 2-point conversions.
Which possibly
wouldn't be a surprise.
Nope.
Or they score 3 touchdowns, 3 2-point conversions.
Could that work?
Oh, wait, that's 24. And get a safety. There you go.
Yeah, that math wasn't mathing.
Yeah,
oh, God.
Strong, dude.
Beezy, let's jump over to a winning team here. Florida State, Leonard Hamilton, 4-1 on the season, although they did just lose to UF, but kept it competitive there.
I was encouraged by the Florida game. I really was.
Yeah.
And
87-74. I mean, ranked team in the Gators, and then they beat Hofstra 79-61.
That Florida final score wasn't really indicative of how that end of the game went. I mean, Florida State had that down to a 4-point game with 2.5 minutes left. And if Florida doesn't get bailed out by a shot that went off after the shot clock went off, but Teddy Valentine is a blind official and didn't see it and didn't want to review it for whatever reason. If they get that correctly, who knows? But instead, it's a bank-in 3 from 5 feet beyond the line with a minute and a half left or so. And understandably, the score kind of went out of hand after that. But I was oddly encouraged by it. They fought. I talked about it with Emily on Tribe Check on Monday, that we were encouraged by the game and that the guys didn't give up. They kept fighting. That's really all you want to see in a game like that, because I've been in plenty of games where Florida State gave up way too early. I was at the North Carolina game a few years ago when they were down like 28-1 early on. So I'm glad they kept fighting. I'm glad they showed some spirit. And then against Hofstra, they honestly put a beat down on a pretty good team. Obviously, people see the name Hofstra and be like, whatever. But Hofstra's a good team. You know, they were top 140 KenPom, have 3 really talented guards, had just beaten Seton Hall and UMass, who Florida State's playing UMass this weekend. But Hofstra's a talented team. And to beat them the way they did was honestly pretty impressive. I was very pleased with that effort last night. And also, got to give our second Arya Masudi shout out of the night, who gave me a shout out on the broadcast. I love that.
Oh, that's fire.
Yeah.
Did you get a clip of that?
I did. I tweeted it.
Oh, damn, we're not
You're
following.
going to have to send that tweet over.
Crazy.
Stop following you.
Crazy.
Really, it's the algorithm. It's Elon's algorithm.
It is.
Screw
But
that.
basketball plays 3 games before we have a podcast next. They play Temple on Friday, who have a player you guys might know, Jamal Mashburn Jr., son of former NBA All-Star Jamal Mashburn. He's averaging like 24 points per game. UMass on Sunday. Both of those games are in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame tip-off event at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And then they play Western Carolina in Tucker Center on Tuesday. That game was supposed to be in Asheville, but it got moved due to all the hurricanes going on in Asheville. So 3 chances to pick up some wins. I think Florida State will be favored in all 3. And if they somehow get to 7-1, that'll be their best start since the 2019-20 season.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's been a solid start already, and I know, it's maybe a little bit of a weaker non-conference slate for FSU, but after what we've seen the last couple of years, this team, they just needed a team to get off to a good start. And like you said, even with the loss to Florida, I was pretty encouraged by how they played for a majority of that game and getting down, able to fight back, continue to make it a game in the second half. I think if Florida State would have played the Gators maybe after 6 or 7 games worth of non-conference competition, they probably would have competed a little bit better, with Florida being a top 25 team, having some guys that already have some chemistry on that roster, whereas Florida State, a lot of new faces, guys still trying to figure out how to play alongside one another. So, I mean, it seems like this FSU team, there's still a lot more potential for them just to continue to get better and better as they gel.
Totally agree. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Florida State started center Malik and he really hasn't played much Division I basketball. And he was going up against a Florida front court that has so much experience. And really, in general, that Florida team has so much experience. Their 3 guards are all 1,000-point scorers in their careers, whether at Florida or at other stops. That's a lot of experience and time to go up against. And I thought Florida State really hung in there for the most part. Obviously, few plays go Florida State's way. Who knows how that game goes? But, I was encouraged for what should be a tournament team in Florida.
Nice. That's what we like to see, baby. That's what we like to see. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Hear the Spear. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Before you leave, please hit that like button. I think we're at like 31, but if we can get to 50, that'd be incredible. Appreciate everybody for tuning in with all the videos and commenting and everything. It helps get out to more FSU fans and everything of that nature. But we're going to be back here live on Saturday for our instant reaction to Florida State's hopeful two-win season. Maybe last hoorah there to get in that win column, but hopefully a reaction to Florida State winning that game. And I don't know, that'll be like around 5 o'clock or so, since it is a 1:30 kickoff. But that's going to wrap it up. Appreciate everybody. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's weekend, and we'll talk to you guys on Saturday late afternoon.